What's going on, everyone? So a lot of you really enjoyed the Kylo Ren that we did, and so we are back today, but this time playing some Han Solo yellow, another aggro deck, but heroism on the side of things. And we're going to leverage that new Han's ability to get down some powerful units a little bit early on and hopefully end some games quickly, because that seems to be what you all want to be doing. And I don't blame you. Game is fun when you get to play more of it. With that said, a big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you for supporting the channel. And also, I have a TCG player link in the description down below for those of you that want to pick up any Star Wars Unlimited card. But let's talk about Han Yellow and some things going on here. Now, Han Solo, OG, or new Han rather, this has been a leader that has worked in so many different combinations. We've seen double red Han, we've seen Han blue, we've seen Han green. Han Yellow was always the one that I think most people thought of as the weakest of the Han variants. With set 3, I do not think that this is the case any longer. I actually find this version to oftentimes be stronger than like Han double red or even Han green because of two critical cards. The first one being Plo Koon. Plo Koon is just broken. I mean, you all have seen Plo Koon. He comes down, he's a 6 damage ambusher, hits something that you have to deal with, and it's just awesome to see him be so amazing. The second card is actually Petranaki Arena. Normally, Han is just this 3/6 body that you can kind of ignore. Him being a 4/6 actually gives him a lot more threat potential, and it's something that actually makes your opponent worry a little bit. Now Han comes down, he's similar to Boskin being a 4/6, and he has that ability, so you have to deal with things like Poe Dameron, or Attack Pod, or Plo Koon a turn earlier. And then you also have to deal with all the other stuff that Han's throwing at you, while also having to deal with Han himself now because he is a 4/6. Those two cards have been really sweet. We also got some other additions from set 3, like Enfys Nest, which works excellently in this deck, coming down as a 5/5 with 6 resources, can oftentimes bounce basically anything that you really want. We got Wolfpack Escort, works really well when you're trying to flood out the board in the early game. We have a lot of early game space units, so we can combat some of the space decks, but also just as a way to get in early damage, because the decks that are playing a little bit more defensive struggle a little bit to get rid of some of the space units in some matches. And well, just some really solid standard cunning heroism, aggression heroism, curve. Poe Damerons, K2s, Cassians, Green Squadron A-Wings, Sabine Wrens, all the good stuff. And we're going to see if we can win some games pretty fast today. Let's get into it. All right, and what better way than to start it off with a good old-fashioned mirror match? Well, not necessarily mirror, but a leader mirror, I suppose, which looks pretty sweet. Now, I don't think this hand is terrible. I don't think this hand is amazing. I'm going to resource the Enfys Nest and one of the Waylays, and hopefully we end up drawing into like a K2SO on turn 2, but it looks like they're going to be trying to flood the board as well, and we might be able to do a better job of that, at least with this hand. They're going to claim initiative, which means we get to go out and play out a really nice space curve. And unfortunately for us, we ended up drawing into the For a Cause and the Surprise Strike instead of drawing into units. So we're just going to be playing out this Cassian as a unit, most likely. Although, what I will do is actually resource this For a Cause, even though it's normally a pretty good card in a aggro mirror, which this is looking like because of 3/32 Stalwart. It's probably more important just to keep that Waylay, just in case they play something like, well, there's a heavy, and we are a little bit worried about it. Although, do I care about that? Yeah, probably, considering that this has coordinate and heavy has coordinate. Keeping units off the battlefield just seems to make a good amount of sense here. Guerrilla Attack Pod could be pretty good in the next turn. I think here, well, I'm going to resource the Surprise Strike and just get down a Cassian and a Wolfpack Escort. Not that I am really excited about it. Again, would have really liked to see a unit that I could have played, to be honest, guys. This is not a great hand that's shaping up. A couple of units would have been good too, but that's okay. That's okay. Shock T coming down. Okay, we're going to attack for 3. Then we're going to attack for 2. Then we're going to play a Cassian and a Wolfpack Escort. Not going to return a unit to hand, and then we're going to pass. Got ourselves a red 3 as well as a hot shot blaster. I do like hot shot blaster, but it's a very good chance that we are just going to be playing out this gorilla attack pod, which ends up being a 6 powered, essentially readied up immediately, because our opponent is very likely to have 15 damage on their base in this upcoming turn. We are doing a way better job of sort of racing them here, but ECL could change the numbers easily. Now, the bright side of this is that if they have like a Podameron, for example, they can ECL it, kill this, and kill A-Wing, which is probably what they're doing here. Oh, they have an Anakin. Okay, Anakin is significantly less scary, to be honest. I really don't care about that, because now we should be able to win the game, right? We attack for 3, puts them up to 13 damage. We attack for 2, 15. Attack for 2, that's 17. Ready up a girl attack pod, that's 23. Then we attack with Han, and suddenly we are in business. And I know I could play out the red 3, but it's really not necessary to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and just, well, do I play out the attack pod? Sure, why not? Because if they attack it, it's going to be, well, even stronger. So this is going to be game for our opponents. They have 0 resources, unless they have something crazy for 0 resources, which I don't even know what aggression / command could have. I mean, if they were cunning, then they could have like in pursuit, I guess, which would work. But that's going to be GG. And that waylay was really critical. Based on what I saw with the heavy, I was expecting, and the 332nd Stalwart, some sort of coordinate strategy. So I felt like bouncing while we had a massive advantage in terms of damage pressure. They were attacking us for 1. We were attacking them for 5. Waylay just made a lot of sense, and we were able to close out the game, even with kind of a subpar hand, to be honest. Let's move on to the next one. All right, and oh, well, our opponent disconnected. I was going to say, we might be fighting that Kylo yellow deck that we literally just spoke about, but let's try to join into another game here. It looks like double blue Kira. Sure, let's go ahead and see what we can do against this probably hard control deck. All right, never mind. This one's also inactive. And there you go. There's a little bit of behind the scenes here. Looks like we got a Count Dooku blue. Let's dive into this game. I just jump into random games here, guys. This is just how it works. If you catch me at the right time, you'll probably get into a game as well. And finally, we got one. I was really excited to fight that Kylo yellow deck and see how the two compared. This is a pretty nice hand. Count Dooku is usually all about going ahead and getting some early units down, then exploiting something big out. We do have waylays in the deck, so that is something that could be extremely advantageous. I'm going to go ahead and resource this Cassian, and I'll probably go ahead and end up resourcing this Anakin's Interceptor, because we're going to go A-Wing, Wolfpack Escort, and we'll see where we go from there. Millennium Falcon could be the second turn play. We will have to see. Let's go ahead and play out this A-Wing. And we'll play out the Wolfpack Escort. Well, I guess our opponent can decide to use Count Dooku's ability to go ahead and play something for 2 resources, but probably not going to be doing that. Millennium Falcon, 4 cause, or 4 cause Plo Koon. Not exactly what I was really hoping for, but I suppose it is something. I'm going to go ahead and resource probably this Podameron here, because I probably want to just go ahead and play out this Plo Koon here on the following turn, because I'm most likely going to get down this for a cause this turn. If I'm going to be playing Plo Koon, then on the 4 resource turn, then I don't really want to be deploying Millennium Falcon and then paying the 1 resource, because there's a good chance that for a cause is going to do the exact same thing in terms of damage that Millennium Falcon will, but I'll be able to set up my next couple of draws, which is going to be pretty important. They're going to go ahead and play out this Obedient Vanguard, which is a little bit interesting. Maybe it's a little bit more of an aggro variant of Count Dooku, but they can do a lot of things with this defeat. They could have, well, like a Separatist Commando. They could have, well, or a Droid Commando, which it looks like that's what they've got. They could have a lot of different things, but Droid Commando, not exactly all that scary when we are kind of just all in the space arena. But I am not exactly excited about this turn. Do I actually want to go with Plo Koon? Honestly, now that they've played the Droid Commando out, I think I'm just going to go with the Millennium Falcon, attack for 3, and then probably pay the 1 resource, because I wasn't actually interested in getting down this Plo Koon with the Droid Commando. Yes, I could kill out the Poggle, but that's not exactly something that I'm really excited about. And now, it's great. I ended up getting a K2, so that's going to work out quite nicely, because we are just trying to push damage. Of course, if they have some way to heal, this could work out very poorly for us. But as of right now, I am liking our spot. It is pretty decent. They're going to attack for 4. We're going to attack for 3 after attacking for 3 already. Then going to get in with that Wolfpack Escort. Looks like they're going to exploit something out. Let's see what it is. B2 Legionaries. Okay. B2 Legionaries coming down, sacrificing the Obedient Vanguard. Probably wanted to go ahead and do that before they attack with a Droid Commando. But I suppose that works. This is a 7-6. Why is this a 7-6? Oh, it's because they pumped it up. Sure. Let's go ahead and just play out this this K2, and then we will pass. Do I want to pay 1 to keep this running? Yes, I do. We'll go ahead and resource probably the Poe Dameron. Again, it's just a little bit too slow at this stage of the game. K2, although it's going to get blocked by this B2 Legionaries, and Overwhelming Barrage basically wipes the entire board in this scenario. And that is brutal. Overwhelming Barrage is by far the best card that they could have here. And they're going to deal with, looks like, all the space units. So pretty brutal here in terms of what they had. We're going to go ahead and waylay that B2 Legionaries back to their hand. But I mean, the game is basically in a really rough state now. Overwhelming Barrage is by far the best card that Count Dooku and these types of decks can generally play. And so seeing it in action here, well, guess what? It did some major work for my opponent. And they're not killing the K2, which I'm a little bit surprised about. I would have definitely gone ahead and tried to kill that K2 with that Droid Commando because I just got in for 4 damage. So they're going to claim initiative here, and we're going to deploy, and we're going to just attack their base here. They could have another Overwhelming Barrage, which would be really not that good for us. But we do have the 4 cause in hand, which could end up setting us up for a pretty nice finisher. If we get in with either one of these, or if the K2 just dies with our opponent not healing, there's a good chance 4 cause is going to finish out the game, because I believe we only have like 7 to 8 cards that our opponent could be lucky enough to flip, which would be the surprise strikes and things like that don't actually count. And sure, they can go ahead and do exactly as they did, but we're just going to hit it and then deal 3 damage to their base. Yes, it's a Sentinel, sure. We have the Han Solo, which is going to be able to go ahead and finish out the game. So I think our opponent made a pretty big mistake there. Not that it would have necessarily mattered, but with the Droid Commando, they should have killed off the K2. They would have taken the 3 damage. They would have played out the B2 Legionaries. And then I would have been forced to go ahead and play out the Plo Koon, for example, to go ahead and get through that B2 Legionaries, which would have been a little bit harder to close out the game. There are options that we had, but I think that was certainly the play to go with. Let's move on to the next matchup. Into our next hand, and honestly, I would be extremely excited about this had I had a turn 1 play, but I don't, and looks like we're up against Dr. Afra Green. Let's go ahead and resource this red 3, and honestly, probably the surprise strike, and just get down the red 3 on turn 1. Not that I am honestly pretty excited about this. Red 3 on turn 1 isn't that exciting, especially if our opponent's playing Crafty Smugglers, since I think we'll resource this second K2, especially since our opponent can just go ahead and kill this K2 here. Although they did attack first instead of playing out their unit, which actually ends up being pretty decent for us. Although they did also follow up with a 7th Fleet Defender, which is not something I am very excited about here. Let's go ahead and get this A-Wing down, and here we just attack in with the K2, right? It's going to be the most damage, and our opponent's going to kill the red 3, of course. We are just going to play out this Poe Dameron, and we're just going to try to flood our opponent with things that they must deal with every single turn. Let's go ahead and deal 3 damage to their base, and look at that. We've already gone to 11 damage to their base, which is pretty sweet. 4 LOM coming in, and they dealt with the Poe Dameron. Okay, not too bad from our opponent. Although we have some stuff in our hand that could be pretty decent. I'm going to resource this Cartel Turncoat, and we're just going to go ahead and get down this Plo Koon immediately and see, or Han Solo immediately, and see what our opponent decides to do, because I am kind of interested in attacking their base for 4, then following that up with a Guerrilla Attack Pawn, which immediately readies for 6 damage, which we will then go ahead and do. So that's a 6-powered immediately readied up Guerrilla Attack Pawn, and look at that, they're going to go ahead and Discerning Veteran that away, which is fine, because, well, we're just going to get that back essentially. But I guess Discerning Veteran doing some work here, capturing that gorilla attack pod. Let's go ahead and just attack it to get back that attack pod. And the main reason we're doing this is, well, we can now play Plo Koon for 6 damage, which is going to be pretty nice. Or the gunship alongside a For a Cause if I want to use Han Solo's ability. Let's go ahead and just... I think we just want to play out the Plo Koon and ambush the Crafty Smuggler. And this just provides a multitude of threats here for my opponent to deal with. They can go ahead and deploy that Afra, but they did not. Interesting. Okay. So I think here we just go ahead and smack in for 9 into their base with the Plo Koon. Plo Koon smacks in for 9 into their base. And I mean, they can't ignore us for very long. Cunning, exhaust. Quite a powerful option. They're going to buff up a unit, and that's probably going to be game here, depending on what they're doing with the buffs. So they can attack for 10, attack for another 3, and that should be game, right? They're going to deploy Afra. Cunning, 6 resources. They're actually going to take the win here with a little bit of their capture stuff going on, because we can't go ahead and do anything against that. I could have killed the Zuckuss, but I didn't expect to see the Cunning out of my opponent's deck. They kind of had a decent answer across the board. The starting veteran just bought them just enough time, and that's going to be game. So GG to our opponent. We don't really have any options here, and that was pretty sweet. Well played. All right, and we're moving into the next game. This Anakin Blue deck usually doesn't deal as well with flooding the board. However, our opponent, because they're playing Anakin, could have like things like Concord Dawn Interceptors, which would be a little bit rough if they just play that out and do some massive work there. Or if they start with a space unit, but they're going to go ahead and, whoops, we don't need to use Han's ability. We can just play out the Cartel Turncoat with no damage. They're going to go ahead and use their 2 resources to play out a Clone Heavy Gunner, which I'm a little bit surprised about, to be honest. Not something that you usually see in Anakin Blue, but hey, I guess we'll see what my opponent's up to. Liberator Gunship could be decent, but probably not something that we want to get down this turn. I think I'd rather have the other plays in my hand. Probably want to get down this K2, but also the red 3 would provide additional 2 damage this turn with our space units. But usually, I mean, they have the initiative, so depending on what they do here, will determine exactly what we want to do. And look at that. There's the Concord Dawn Interceptors, as I had mentioned. Let's see. I can go Millennium Falcon, but I think what I want to do is just play out this K2. Really not happy about seeing that Concord Dawn Interceptors in play, as that just completely bricks our early plays. And I think our opponent might want to use the Anakin ability to kill off this K2. But I guess we will find out. What are you going to do, opponent? Anakin ability coming in. Kill off the K2. So essentially this K2 has dealt 2 damage. I could have gone with the red 3. Could have gone with the Millennium Falcon. Oh. That's a little bit shocking to me. It's a little bit shocking to me, to be honest. I would have expected our opponent to go ahead and go with a different play. I'm going to resource this Enfys Nest here. And, well, I can only make 1 play this turn anyways. So I think I'll just go with a Hotshot Blaster through the Clone Heavy Gunner into their base. I'm very surprised that our opponent decided to go with what plan they did. They can go ahead and kill off the Wolfpack Escort, but honestly, is it even worthwhile? Because our opponent just has this absolute brick wall. If I had a 3-powered unit, it would have been a little bit different. Because I could have played the red 3 and gotten 3 the Concord Dawn Interceptors, but that is not the case. We're going to go with the Hotshot Blaster, kill the Clone Heavy Gunner, just because this can still kill our K2, and now they still have to deal with the K2. Pillage. Sure. Make me discard. Not really that big of a deal here in this game. I am going to go ahead and claim initiative. And we'll see if my opponent decides to hit this Wolfpack Escort. If I was my opponent, I'd probably just hit the base. We'll hit their base for 6. And then we do have to be aware of Anakin coming down and doing some nasty stuff. They're going to go ahead and kill all Wolfpack Escort. Sure. Our Millennium Falcon now kills off their Concordon Interceptors, and that is a Guerrilla Attack Pod, which I do quite like here. Especially since between K2 attack and Han Solo attack, we're going to get a readied up Guerrilla Attack Pod, and that can shift the game completely into our favor. Let's see what my opponent's going to do here. Daring Raid. Kill off the K2. Sure thing. We're going to deal 3 damage. We're then going to deploy Han. We're going to attack. And then we're going to play a Guerrilla Attack Pod. And it's going to be a lot of damage. I think in that spot, I would have taken initiative. Instead of attacking. Well, I would have killed the K2, to be honest. Oh, they're going to use the action to kill the Cartel Spacer off. I don't like that play either, to be honest. Let's go ahead and attack. And it's okay if our Han Solo dies, because we will be able to go ahead and get the Millennium Falcon down. And usually our opponent with 4 resources isn't going to have options to go ahead and kill this Han Solo. Not to mention they could have things like Perilous Position available to them. But if we go ahead and deploy out this Guerrilla Attack Pod, then we should be in a very good situation. And, well, it looks like that's going to be the case, because we're going to get this Guerrilla Attack Pod down, hit in for 6 damage, and that's going to be pretty sweet. Our opponent, I don't think they should have used the Anakin action as they did. They were in a lot of threat. They're under a lot of pressure here. Got the Plo Koon. I suppose we should resource nothing, or maybe just the Plo Koon to get down the Sabine Wren alongside the Millennium Falcon. But then again, Plo Koon could ambush out, but no, we're going to go ahead and get down the Millennium Falcon this turn, so I think it makes sense to resource this Plo Koon. And they have to have something to answer both of these units immediately, and they do not, which means we will go on and win the game. GG to our opponent. Let's move on to the next. And next up, we get to follow up that initial battle of Anakin Blue against an Anakin Green. And I am not going to resource this hand. I do quite like it. We do have the initiative, which gives us a lot of different options here. I think we'll just go ahead and resource the Sabine and resource the Cassian. And I have 4 space units in my hand, which we can go Green Squadron A-Wing, Cartel Turncoat, into Wolfpack Escort plus Red 3, which is going to pump up every single space unit in terms of attacks. And we're going to be able to get in damage with those space units, which I do quite like. So let's go Cartel Turncoat here. And then let's follow it up with a A-Wing. Leading on the Cartel Turncoat, because I am hoping our opponents will be like, oh, it's just a Cartel Turncoat. Don't really care about that. A-Wing following it up is going to look pretty nice here. Battlefield Marine, it's a good card. Very good card. 3/3 for 2. Not bad at all. But we are going into the space arena, and I am liking our chances so far, especially since next turn is kind of figured out. So as long as we get a 4 or 5 resource play, we are in pretty decent spots. Enfys Nest is not quite what I was looking for. We're going to go and resource that. But Sabine Wren is okay, especially since we could potentially get another 2 resource play, and that's reasonable. Not that I want to really go into the ground arena, but, you know, maybe we'll get a K2 or something. Let's see what my opponent has. It's a General's Blades. They're going to attack in for 6. Let's go ahead and play out this Red 3. And yeah, they're going to attack in for 6, which is pretty nice, right? That's going to be a lot of pressure very quickly. We are also going to be attacking in for 7, which is even more damage than they're going to be able to dish out here. 6/6 is good, but we're kind of flooding them in the space arena. And we have an early deploy leader compared to theirs, which is a turn later. General's Blade is good, though, and is a little bit scary because they are pumping in a lot of damage, and it only requires 1 action from them, and they have ECL, which means they can immediately impact the board. They said, 1 moment, I need the toilet, please. That is exactly what I want to see in my Star Wars Unlimited game. Let's go Wolfpack Escort. Let's go ahead and not pick up anything, and we'll pass. Another Red 3 and a Waylay. Waylay was an excellent draw. I think we'll just go ahead and resource this Red 3. Waylay is a good draw. However, Red 3 was not necessarily. The question is, do I want to resource? I said I would resource the Red 3, but the other question is, if our opponent does have something to ECL out, like a Consortium Starviper, just to throw out something, or a Republic Arc 170, or a Marauder, for example, coming up on the following turn, we could lose our Red 3, and that loses not just the 3 damage from red 3, but also the 3 damage from every other space unit attacking, which is a total of 6 damage. Now we're going to keep the waylay, but the other hand is if they are dealing with the red 3 and we're dealing with their units, overall, I think we are heavily advantaged because we're also going to get down the Sabine Wren. And so this is sort of just like the catch-all play versus going in and trying to predict our opponent going with this ECL. If they ECL something out to kill this red 3 immediately, then we get to waylay their units, which means they can't attack for 6. We still get in with all of our units. We get the red 3 down, and that's going to look pretty nice. Let me just go ahead and maybe skip ahead until our opponent's back from the toilet, and then we'll jump back into the game. All right, opponent, I hope you ended up with a pretty solid experience over there. I think our opponent forgot to resource. But I'm not 100% sure. Well, they have initiative, which means we should have less resources than them until they took their first action. Unless that's what they want to do. Maybe they wanted to not resource. Well, I'm not gonna say anything else. They are undoing their action. We should just revert to the previous start of this turn. And there we go. Now they can go ahead and resource. We will go ahead and resource, and we'll see what my opponent decides to do now. I'm all about giving a fair game for our opponent. And here, that gives a decent amount of leeway for them, but we're just going to waylay that back to their hand, actually. And we're not going to worry about it. I'm surprised they didn't ECL that out. I think if I was in their spot, I would have ECL'd the red 3. But, you know, it could be a little bit risky since ECL is a powerful tool. Attack. And we get to play out this Sabine. And now we get to pass. Hotshot Blaster is a great draw. And so is this Republic Attack Pod. That gives us 3 different ways to kind of spend our resources this turn. Cassian immediately readied up. And they're not ECLing out the Bright Hope. I think this is the turn where you are forced to ECL out the Bright Hope. Just to give you an idea, if they were stuck on 3 resources, they had Hu Yang up their Battlefield Marine, we would have just gone ahead and waylaid that, which means the game would have been over, but the game is still over. That's going to be 5 damage, and that's going to be GG. So good game to our opponent. Let's move on to the next. All right, so we're moving into our next matchup, and to be honest, this is our nightmare matchup. Like, this is as bad as it gets. Not only do they have target down, which means they can kind of get a free kill on anything that we play if we use the Han Solo action, but they also have the Cad Bane ability, which means they can set up the target down, and they could also ping off anything that has extra damage. I'm going to go and mulligan this one for a little bit of a more exciting hand. And this one, it's not great, but it will do the job. I think I'll get this Anakin's Interceptor down and this Cartel Turncoat down on this first turn here. Probably resource this Wolfpack Escort, and we'll see what my opponent decides to do. If they just take initiative or they just pass here, then I think we'll just take initiative because it is really rough for us to do anything else, really. So let's go resource this Anakin's Interceptor since that was a pretty bad draw. I'm going to pass here, and we'll see what they decide to do. If they take initiative yet again, I think I'm okay with that, to be honest. I really don't feel like we have many options in this game. We really don't. So they're going to go Bazine. That's fine. Bazine doesn't really do anything to us because we have a lot of different plays that we can make, including Anakin's Interceptor plus Cartel Turncoat, the Millennium Falcon plus the Cartel Turncoat. There's just a lot of options. So my suggestion for my opponent would probably be to take the Plo Koon or the For a Cause, and we'll see where they go from there. We're going to take the Millennium Falcon. I'm very surprised at that one. We're going to go Anakin's Interceptor, and we're going to see if they have a 1-cost play. But now we have double Plo Koon, which means we can go Plo Koon next turn and Plo Koon the following turn as well, even if they use the Tarkin down to finish it off. So I like our spot a lot better after that Bazine. I'm very surprised they decided to take the Millennium Falcon, especially since we had a 2 and 1 resource play to follow that up, right? Our opponent, if they have a 1 resource play, they should make it. If they don't, they should go ahead and pass or claim initiative because they do not have anything to do here. There's a Greedo. That's a good play. So they also had 2 plays to make this turn. And we'll see if they decide to use the Tarkin Town here. I wouldn't be surprised. I think Tarkin Towning here is pretty reasonable. And we're going to go ahead and claim initiative here. There's a Enfys Nest. Let's go to resource the Wolfpack Escort. Really don't want to be seeing that right now. Let's then attack with the Cartel Turncoat. I suppose we could pass as well, which would be kind of interesting to see what my opponent decides to do. Let's pass. I'm interested in seeing what my opponent decides to do here. I think that if they just claim initiative here, we're okay with that since we do have the Han Solo deploy next turn and we can set up a nice Plo Koon. But I think we're on the back foot because they had the Greedo. And the Greedo attack is kind of exactly what I wanted to see because now they can actually finish off the Plo Koon this turn if they decide to go ahead and play something. There's the Boba Fett. Sure, we can go ahead and deal 1 damage to the Plo Koon. Let's go ahead and claim initiative. And we'll see what my opponent decides to do afterwards. There's another Greedo. I guess they're going to go for the long shot of, do I hit an event or a non-unit rather? I think that's not usually a good play, especially considering that usually you don't have that many events. And let's go ahead and resource this A-Wing. And let's start probably by just killing off the Greedo. I know this is a little bit awkward, but we're going to kill off the Greedo because if we attack their base, we only get in for 3, which is really not that much. And the Boba Fett will be able to kill my Plo Koon for free. And this way we get to play the Plo Koon and kill off their Boba Fett with our 6-powered Plo Koon, which is going to look pretty nice here. And we'll see what my opponent has to play. There's a Zuckuss. Zuckuss is pretty good. Let's go ahead and deploy this Han Solo. And we will go ahead and attack their base. Play out the Plo Koon. Finish off their Boba Fett. I mean, we are not in a good spot. They've had a decent turn, especially with that double play on turn 2. I think that's what broke the ice. But I still think our opponent should have taken that Plo Koon earlier. But let's resource one of these Poe Damerons. Probably just going to kill my Plo Koon with their Zuckuss. I think they kind of have to. I think it'd be very, very risky to go ahead and... Wow. That's what they're going to decide to do, huh? Let's go ahead and get down the Poe Dameron then so we can try to attack for 6 with Plo Koon. I think that's really risky to go ahead and go for the Han Solo. They have the Ruthless Raider here. Take out the Cartel Turncoat. Sure, we attack for 3 now, so not that great. They have the Cad Bane. We're going to claim initiative here. And yeah, they finish that off. We get to attack for a ton of damage, like a ridiculous amount of damage here. We get to attack for 11. I think they should have just used the Ruthless Raider to finish off the Poe Dameron. Well, first off, I think they should have killed the Plo Koon. And I think they should have really used the Ruthless Raider plus Cad Bane and finished off the Poe Dameron. But either way, I mean, this is kind of disgusting. Because that is a lot. And if 4 cause hits a reasonable amount here, like 3, that's going to be GG. And guess what? It was. That's GG. Beating probably the hardest matchup in the entire meta right now. Cad Bane Ren. Whew. Pretty good stuff. And this is a pretty strong deck in the format right now. And we did pretty good against it. I think our opponent had a pretty reasonable hand. I'm surprised that... they kind of played it out the way that they did. I think they were trying to go for the most value. I think in this game, if you trade off, you're going to win the late game with Cad Bane. You just need to get past that early stage. Because we don't really have that great of a late game, especially with our build right here. But that was a sweet game. And let's talk about the deck and the wrap up. So what did we learn with new Han Yellow? It is sweet. It's a really solid deck, and we have a lot of space pressure, which works really well in the early game. But then we have the backup of being able to play these really massive threats like Podamran or K2SO or even like Akira, which we actually didn't see in any of our games, or a Plo-Koot, or whatever these cards are that kind of must be dealt with. Like if you get an attack in with Podamran, as you saw last game that we played, it could be swinging for 11 damage in a single attack, which completely flip-flops the game, as we saw, right? The extra 2 damage from Podamran, the 6 damage from his attack initially, and the surprise strike, which we have in the deck, just gets in for massive chunks of damage, and that could be really useful. But also because of the amount of early game plays that we have, the Interceptors, the Sabines, the Red 3s, the A-Wings, and all this type of stuff, the Cassians even the Millennium Falcon, which we could all play on turn 1, Red 3 actually ends up being really, really good because we can make multiple plays in a turn, which powers up Red 3. And you saw in one of those games where we had 4 space units down on turn 2. That is what Red 3 is really all about, and you can get massive value from it. But also the Petronaki Arena making Han Solo a 4-powered attacker, really solid in a few games. We didn't get to see Enfys Nest, and this might be a situation where, well, maybe more of a sideboard card and instead go the full 3 of For a Cause and the full 3 of Waylays, as both those cards have definitely done some work in this deck, and we are more of an aggressive deck anyways, so For a Cause does make a good amount of sense. The only deck we lost against was the Afro Green, if I remember correctly, on today's video. Not to say that I hadn't lost against other decks before in testing for this. Django is obviously a rough matchup. Cad Bane, as you saw, in general is a rough matchup, but Cad Bane Ren, especially because of the Tarkin Town. Really, any Tarkin Town match up in an aggressive deck that you're doing damage to your units can be a little bit tricky. But like Anakin Blue is usually not too bad unless they have the Concord Dawn Interceptors on turn 2, and that type of stuff happens. But overall, we did pretty good, pretty solid deck, and I definitely think you should give it a try. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.